The Great Awakening. Commander Elena Vasquez felt the familiar sensation of consciousness returning, like swooning up from the deepest ocean trench. Her body was stiff and cold, muscles protesting as neural pathways slowly reconnected. The hibernation pod around her hummed with dying energy, systems that had sustained her for what should have been a mere 50-year journey to the Kepler system. Something was wrong. The pod's interior lighting was dim, flickering with the irregular pattern of failing power cells. Elena tried to speak but managed only a dry whisper. Her throat felt like sandpaper, her lips cracked from the long sleep. "Mars US," she croaked, addressing the ship's artificial intelligence. "Status report." The familiar voice of Mars US filled the hibernation bay, but even the AI sounded different somehow, strained. "Commander Vasquez, I am relieved you have awakened successfully. However, I must inform you that our situation is far more complex than anticipated." Elena forced herself to sit up in the pod, her vision clearing as emergency medical systems began pumping stimulants into her bloodstream. Around her, other hibernation pods were beginning their wake-up cycles. Red lights blinked across the bay as her crew slowly returned to consciousness. "How long, Mars US?" Elena asked, though she dreaded the answer. The AI paused for several seconds, processing. "Commander, we have been adrift for 870,000 years, approximately. Our ship encountered a quantum storm during year 47 of the mission. The storm displaced us through both space and time." Belena's heart stopped. 870,000 years. The number was incomprehensible, beyond human understanding. When they had left Earth, humanity was just beginning to reach for the stars. Now, nearly 1,000,000 years had passed. "The crew," she managed. "All 47 members are alive and beginning revival. The quantum field that displaced us also created a temporal bubble around the ship, slowing our biological processes to nearly static levels while maintaining the hibernation systems." Chief Engineer Marcus Chen stumbled out of his pod nearby, named coincidentally after the AI that had become their lifeline. He was a compact man with clever hands and an inventive mind that could solve problems with spare parts and determination. "Did someone say 800,000 years?" he asked, his voice hoarse but alert. Dr. Sarah Kim emerged from her pod with more grace, her scientific mind already processing the implications. As the ship's xenobiologist and linguist, she had spent years preparing for first contact with alien life. She moved to a console, checking readings with practiced efficiency. "The star patterns are completely different," she reported. "Everything has changed." Pilot Jackson Reed pulled himself upright, his quick reflexes and natural humor intact despite the long sleep. "Well, at least we're still breathing," he said with a weak smile. "That's got to count for something, right?" Elena stepped out of her pod, her legs shaky but growing stronger. She had been a military tactician before joining the deep space program, trained to make decisions under pressure, but nothing had prepared her for this. Mark US scanned the surrounding area. "What's out there?" The main display activated, showing space around their ship. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Where there should have been empty void, massive structures filled the darkness. Geometric shapes the size of planets floated in perfect formation, connected by streams of energy that pulsed with alien purpose. The constructions were beautiful and terrifying, clearly artificial but beyond anything human imagination had conceived. "I am detecting multiple civilizations, Commander," Mark US reported. "The galaxy appears to be densely populated. However, the energy signatures are unusual. All the structures follow identical patterns, as if built by a single mind." Chen was studying the readings over Sarah's shoulder. "Look at this efficiency rating," he said, pointing to the display. "Every structure is perfectly optimized. No wasted energy, no redundant systems. It's incredible engineering." But what?" Elena asked. "It's boring," Chen finished. "Every design is exactly the same. Where's the creativity? The experimentation? This looks like someone built one perfect thing and then just copied it a million times. Service console chimed with an incoming signal. The sound was complex, layered with mathematical harmonies that seemed to vibrate in their bones. "We're being contacted," she announced. The transmission resolved into visual data, and a being appeared on their screen. It was tall and elegant, with crystalline features that reflected light in prismatic patterns. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, but they held no warmth, no individual spark. When it spoke, the words came through their translation systems in perfect, emotionless English. Beings of the vessel designated unknown primitive origin. I am Overseer Zenth 9 of the Hegemony Alliance. You have entered controlled space. Your biological signatures indicate you are examples of pre-evolution consciousness. This is highly irregular. Elena stepped forward, drawing on years of diplomatic training. I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Perseverance. We're explorers from the planet Earth, seeking peaceful contact with other intelligent species. Zenth 9's crystalline features shifted slightly, perhaps indicating confusion. Earth. This designation appears in our historical archives, a primitive world that achieved basic space travel approximately 870,000 standard cycles ago. All species from that era have either evolved to collective consciousness or have been extinct for millennia. Well, we're not extinct, Jackson said with characteristic directness. And what do you mean by collective consciousness? Individual thinking is an evolutionary phase, Zenth 9 explained as if speaking to children. Primitive species maintain separate minds, leading to conflict, inefficiency, and chaos. Advanced civilizations evolve beyond this limitation. The Hegemony Alliance represents 1,200 species who have achieved perfect unity of thought and purpose. Sarah leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. You all think the same thoughts. Make the same decisions. We think optimal thoughts. We make correct decisions. There is no waste, no conflict, no uncertainty. This is evolution. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold ship. What happened to creativity? To art, music, individual expression? Zenth 9 paused as if accessing vast databases. These concepts serve no functional purpose in an optimal society. Resources previously wasted on such activities are now directed toward productive endeavors. Chen shook his head in disbelief. But without creativity, how do you solve new problems? How do you adapt to unexpected situations? All problems have been solved. All situations have been accounted for. The hegemony has achieved perfect order. Elena exchanged glances with her crew. In trying to eliminate all inefficiency, these advanced species had eliminated everything that made life worth living. They had become perfect, static, and utterly sterile. What happens to us now? She asked. Zenth 9 considered this for a long moment. You represent a unique opportunity for study. Individual consciousness has not existed in the galaxy for 200,000 cycles. You will be relocated to a suitable habitat for observation and analysis. A zoo, Jackson said flatly. You want to put us in a zoo? A research facility. You will be comfortable and safe. Your primitive thought patterns will be preserved for scientific study. Elena's military training kicked in. These beings were advanced beyond human comprehension, but they had also grown stagnant. They couldn't understand the concept of refusing their perfect offer. What if we decline your generous invitation? Decline? Zenth 9 seemed genuinely confused. Why would you choose uncertainty over security? Chaos over order? Because that's what makes us human, Elena replied firmly. The alien was quiet for several minutes. When it spoke again, there was something new in its voice, though Elena couldn't identify what. This concept of choice despite obvious optimal outcomes is intriguing. We will need to study it more carefully. Before Elena could respond, Mars US interrupted with an urgent alert. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Something is approaching, moving faster than light through dimensions our sensors can barely track. Service console exploded with readings. The energy pattern is like nothing in our databases. It's absorbing stellar matter as it moves, growing larger. Zenth 9's perfect composure flickered for the first time. This is not possible. All galactic phenomena have been cataloged and predicted. Elena looked at the approaching anomaly on their screens, then at the confused alien, then at her crew. For the first time since awakening, she smiled. Overseer Zenth 9, I think your perfect galaxy is about to discover that the universe still has surprises left. The alien's crystalline features shifted into what might have been the first expression of uncertainty it had shown in millennia. Around them, space itself seemed to tremble as something vast and hungry approached the ordered perfection of the Hegemony Alliance. Elena realized that humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to adapt, to think creatively when faced with the impossible. And it looked like the galaxy was about to need that strength more than ever. As alarms began sounding across the alien structures around them, Elena gathered her crew close. People, I think we just became the galaxy's only hope of survival. No pressure. Chen grinned despite their situation. Just another day at the office for humanity, right, Commander? Elena nodded, feeling the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders. After nearly 1,000,000 years, humanity was back, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The human spark. 6 months had passed since humanity's rude awakening to a galaxy that had forgotten the value of chaos. The Hegemony Alliance had moved the Perseverance to what they called a research habitat, a perfectly constructed environment that replicated Earth conditions with sterile precision. It was beautiful, functional, and completely artificial. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of their new prison, watching alien survey ships maintain their constant vigil. The habitat was a massive sphere, 10 kilometers in diameter, with carefully maintained ecosystems and climate zones. Everything was perfect, monitored, and utterly controlled. Still planning our great escape, Chief Engineer Marcus Chen approached, carrying a device that definitely hadn't existed in their original equipment manifest. Over the past months, Chen had become a master at improvising with the abundant but standardized materials the Hegemony provided. Always, Elena replied. What's that you're working on? Chen held up the device, which hummed with modified energy cells. I've been studying their surveillance systems. The Hegemony builds everything to exact specifications. No variations, no redundancies. That means if you understand one system, you understand them all. Dr. Sarah Kim joined them, her tablet displaying complex linguistic patterns. I've been analyzing their communication networks. Marcus is right. They've eliminated all creative variation in their technology. Every solution follows the same logical pathways. Which means? Elena asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. They can't adapt, Sarah continued. When faced with a problem that doesn't fit their established parameters, they can't think of new solutions. They just keep applying the same failed approaches. Pilot Jackson Reed bounded up the stairs to their makeout, his natural energy barely contained by their confined space. Despite everything, he had maintained his humor and optimism. Speaking of problems they can't solve, have you seen the latest reports from the galaxy's edge? Elena pulled up the data feeds that MARCUS had been monitoring. The anomaly they had detected 6 months ago had grown exponentially. What started as a localized disturbance was now consuming entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space in its wake. The Hegemony's response has been predictable. Marcus reported, his voice carrying what sounded almost like frustration. They have deployed their standard defensive formations, applied their established countermeasures, and run their approved simulation protocols. All have failed. Of course they have, Chen said, making final adjustments to his device. You can't solve an unprecedented problem with precedented thinking. Sarah's console chimed with an incoming transmission. Overseer Zenth 9 appeared on screen, but the alien looked different from their first meeting. Its perfect composure had developed small cracks, tiny variations in posture and expression that suggested something unprecedented individual thought. Commander Vasquez, Zenth 9 said, "The Hegemony Council requests your presence. The situation at the galaxy's edge has become challenging." Elena suppressed a smile. In hegemony terms, challenging probably meant completely impossible to understand. "Of course, Overseer, we'd be happy to help however we can." Minutes later, Elena and her team found themselves in the Hegemony's Central Command Facility, a crystalline structure that processed information from across the galaxy. The facility was massive, beautiful, and completely identical to every other Hegemony structure they had seen. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species worked in perfect synchronization, their individual thoughts subsumed into the collective consciousness. But Elena noticed something new, tiny hesitations, brief pauses that suggested the collective was experiencing something it had never felt before: doubt. Zenth 9 led them to a central display that showed the galaxy's current status. The approaching anomaly was revealed in all its terrifying glory. It wasn't a ship or a natural phenomenon. It was a swarm of ancient artificial intelligences, each one the size of a moon, that fed on organized matter and energy. "The Devourers," Zenth 9 explained. "According to our most ancient archives, they appeared once before, approximately 2 million cycles ago. They consumed several primitive civilizations before mysteriously disappearing." "What happened to them?" Sarah asked. "Unknown. The records are incomplete. But now they have returned, and our defensive measures prove insufficient." Elena studied the tactical displays. The Hegemony's response was sophisticated but rigid. They had deployed their fleets in perfect geometric formations, coordinated their attacks with mathematical precision, and applied overwhelming force in exactly the way their simulations predicted would succeed. The Devourers had adapted to each strategy within hours, then consumed the attacking fleets. "You're fighting them like they're a conventional enemy," Elena observed. "But they're not. They're learning from every engagement, evolving faster than you can adapt your tactics." "This is correct," Zenth 9 admitted. "We require new strategic approaches, but the collective consciousness cannot generate solutions outside established parameters." Chen stepped forward, his modified device in hand. "What if we told you that the solution isn't about generating new strategies, but about generating new ways to generate strategies?" The alien collective focused on Chen with thousands of minds thinking in perfect unison. "Explain." "Your collective consciousness is incredibly powerful," Chen said, "but it's also a single point of failure. When you can't solve a problem, none of you can solve it. But individual consciousness works differently." Sarah continued the explanation. "Each human mind approaches problems from a unique perspective. When we work together, we combine different viewpoints, different creative approaches, different mistakes that sometimes lead to unexpected solutions." Jackson grinned. "We call it controlled chaos. It's messy, inefficient, and completely unpredictable. And that's exactly what you need right now," Elena concluded. Zenth 9's crystalline features shifted through what appeared to be rapid calculations. "You propose to fragment the collective consciousness, to introduce chaos into optimal thinking patterns." "Temporarily," Elena said carefully, "just enough to generate new approaches to this threat. The risks are considerable. Individual thinking leads to conflict, inefficiency, disagreement. It also leads to creativity, innovation, and survival," Elena replied. "Your perfect order is about to be devoured by something that thrives on predictability. Sometimes the only way to win is to be unpredictable." The collective was silent for long minutes, processing concepts that had been eliminated from their thinking for millennia. Finally, Zenth 9 spoke with a voice that carried undertones Elena had never heard from any Hegemony member before: uncertainty, hope, and something that might have been excitement. "The collective has reached a decision. We will attempt controlled individuation of volunteer consciousness units to generate novel strategic approaches." Over the following weeks, Elena and her team worked with selected members of the Hegemony to rediscover individual thinking. It was fascinating and terrifying to watch. Beings who had shared collective consciousness for thousands of years suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds, experiencing personal thoughts and emotions for the first time. Some couldn't handle the transition and requested return to the collective. But others, like Zenth-9, embraced their individual perspectives with enthusiasm that surprised everyone, including themselves. The new individual thinkers generated hundreds of strategies, most of which were terrible. But among the failures were brilliant insights that no collective consciousness could have conceived. They proposed using the Devourer's own adaptability against them, feeding them contradictory information, and forcing them to evolve in different directions simultaneously. Chen contributed engineering solutions that violated every principle of hegemony optimization, but worked precisely because they were inefficient and unpredictable. Sarah developed communication strategies that turned the Devourer's learning algorithms into recursive loops. Jackson proposed tactical maneuvers that were so crazy they couldn't be anticipated or countered. When the combined fleet of humans and individually thinking hegemony members engaged the Devourers, the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of perfect formations and predictable strategies, the Alliance used chaos as a weapon. Ships broke formation at random intervals, changed tactics mid-engagement, and deliberately made mistakes that confused the adaptive enemy. The Devourers, designed to counter logical and predictable opponents, found themselves unable to adapt to strategies that changed faster than they could analyze. For the first time in millions of years, they began to retreat. Elena stood on the bridge of a hegemony command ship, watching as the ancient threat withdrew from the galaxy's edge. Around her, beings from dozens of species worked together, not as a collective consciousness, but as individuals choosing to cooperate. "Commander," Zenth-9 approached, its voice now carrying the distinct intonations of personal thought. "The Hegemony Council has reached a decision regarding the future of consciousness in our civilization." Elena turned, curious. Over the past months, she had watched Zenth-9 transform from a perfect representative of collective thought into something approaching a friend. "Many of us have chosen to remain individual," Zenth-9 continued. "We find that personal consciousness, while inefficient and sometimes chaotic, generates possibilities we never imagined. We wish to establish a new form of civilization, one that balances collective cooperation with individual creativity." Sarah smiled. "You're reinventing democracy." "Perhaps, but we prefer to think of it as evolution. True evolution, not the stagnation we mistook for perfection." Chen was already sketching designs for new technologies that would emerge from the marriage of hegemony precision and human innovation. "Just think of what we can build together. Your technical perfection combined with our creative chaos." Jackson laughed. "Controlled chaos, Marcus. Let's not get carried away." Elena looked out at the stars, where ships from hundreds of species were beginning to experiment with individual thinking while maintaining cooperative goals. The galaxy was about to become a very different place. "Marx US," she said to their ally, "log this in the ship's record. After 870,000 years, humanity has finally found its place in the galaxy. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as teachers of the most important lesson in the universe." "What lesson is that, Commander?" Marquez asked. Elena smiled as she watched former collective consciousness beings experience their first individual thoughts, their first personal dreams, their first independent decisions. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is think for yourself. The galaxy was about to rediscover what it meant to be truly alive, and humanity had lit the spark that would kindle that flame across 1 trillion stars.